The legacy frame specification from HTML3 and 4 has been obsoleted in HTML5. We're going to cover it here so you can recognize it when you see it. If you don't expect to be maintaining old legacy websites, then feel free to skip the rest of this movie. Let's make a working copy of frameset.html. I'm going to rename this to frameset-working.html. This file actually loads some of the files from this frame subdirectory, and these are all very simple HTML files, as we'll see. Open up frameset-working.html in the text editor, and as you can see, this is a very short document. You'll notice that it doesn't have a doc type at the top because this is not actually legal HTML5, so we don't want the browser to think that it is. We have a title here in the head section. And after the head section, you'll notice that there's no body. Instead of a body, we have a frame set. And a frame set contains a frame. It can also contain other frame sets. So when we open this in the browser, you see that this document has these 3 frames. And each of these frames is actually opening an HTML file from this frame subdirectory. So the first frame here is F1, the second one is F2, and the third one is F3. And if I right-click on this F1, you see it says this frame, and I can view frame source, and there's that document that says frame 1 in it. So let's look at the syntax of these tags. The frame set tag has a calls attribute or a rows attribute. And then inside quotation marks, it has a specification for how those columns are laid out. In this case, the right column is taking up 75% of the space, and the left column is taking whatever's left. That asterisk means evenly divide up whatever's left. So you could have more than one of them, and it would evenly divide them. So as I change the size of this window, you notice that the right-hand side continues to take up 75% of however much space that is. So it's got those 2 columns, 75% on the right, and whatever's left on the left. And then left to right, we load up those columns. So the first column is a frame, and it has a source file of this f1.html. So that's this frame here, frame 1. That's f1.html. And the second column has a frame set with rows. And the rows are 100 pixels and whatever's left. So as I change the height of this window, you see that that top frame remains the same size. It's always 100 pixels. And whatever's left is taken up by frame 3. So we have these files, F2 and F3, and those are taking up the rows. The first one is the top row. The second one is the next row down. And then we close our frame set elements, and that's it. So you might notice one other thing about this is that there's these horrible looking border things, and you can actually use those to drag around these borders, which is a pretty bad idea actually. I'll reload this and make them the default again. So mostly, I think you're going to want to get rid of those borders because they don't serve any useful purpose. They serve a rather nasty, non-useful purpose, and they're ugly. So the way to get rid of them is with the frame border attribute. So here in frame set, I'm just going to say frame border equals 0, and I put the 0 in quotes. When I save this and reload it, you notice that all the frame borders go away. In some older browsers that won't quite get rid of all the frame borders, you'll need to also put that same attribute down here on this other frame set. And so I'm going to go ahead and do that anyway and hit reload over here. Now we don't have these borders. I can't grab them and change their size, and they're working exactly as they're supposed to work. It's also worth noting that there is no CSS equivalent of that frame border equals 0. Because this tag is so old and not part of any recent specification, CSS simply does not have a selector for selecting a frame set. So the code I've shown you in this movie is considered obsolete. It still works in modern browsers because the browsers all go to great lengths to support legacy code. But this is not standard HTML, and you should not use this feature in any new code.